The following Sunday message is brought to you by City Tutoring, an academy dedicated to classical education and pure mathematics, logic, rhetoric, theology, and proper standards of behavior, serving over 1,000 students from the United States and Europe in the past several years.
We are often told that revolutions come from poverty and hunger. No. Revolution comes when the people are not only hungry but humiliated, when they see the feast of kings spread before them and are told to be grateful for the crumbs, when they are told to obey laws written by men who break them, to worship democracy run by donors, to trust the science spoken by liars in lab coats. It is not bread that triggers revolution. It is the realization that you've been played. What turns hunger into revolution is consciousness, the awareness that the system is rigged, that laws are selectively enforced, that power wears a smile and calls itself progress, when your human dignity is priced like a commodity, and your neighborhood is devoured by development and unaccountable foreign investors and corrupt, apostate politicians who aid them. When you're told to tighten your belt while the elite fly on private jets to climate conferences.
Are you wondering what's coming next? The economy, the war, the next election, or maybe something deeper, something darker, something no one dares say out loud? Today's message isn't safe. It won't soothe your nerves, but it just might save your soul.
Happy Sunday, everyone. My name is Alfred Cromwell. First, I have two announcements. Well, three really, but number one is if you are new to the channel, I welcome you. This channel covers mathematics, but also moral topics as well, because I believe that it's not enough to just do mathematics. You have to have a proper attitude of life, and you have to be able to understand how to live properly in order for you to have a good foundation, a good grounding in all that you do. So I have some subscribers who watch the math content, but I also have other subscribers who watch the moral content. Either way is fine. And I think that either one is beneficial, especially the spiritual sense. You have to have a proper sense of spirituality. Number two, those of you who wrote me letters recently in the past month, they are going out on Monday, tomorrow. So to the gentleman, if you are watching the video from the Canary Islands in Spain, who wrote to me, thank you. I appreciate your letter. Very interesting topics. And so your letter is going out tomorrow, as well as the gentleman from Texas. You know who you are. I don't want to say your name, of course. I never reveal private information, but your letter is going out tomorrow. And thank you so much for the what you sent me. That was very kind of you. But today, so those are the only announcements that I had for now. But today we're going to talk about dictatorship in a way. And I come to you, I'm not here to sugarcoat things or to give you honeyed praise and comfort, soft-laced comfort anyway. I have to come with flint and fire, as I always do, with a sword of words forged, not for your flattery, but for war, because we are at war. And if war has to be waged, let it be against the ideas that rot the soul of civilization. Ideas that are sterile, arrogant, and embalmed in self-deceit. And I have to make a confession to you all, because what got me thinking about today's message was something that happened fairly frequently back in the days of my youth, before algorithms ruled and people still argued face to face. Some of my peers, I well remember, in moments of frustration, would hurl at me what they thought was the ultimate insult. I think in many quarters today, it's still considered an insult. They would say, "Oh, you sound like a potential dictator." They meant it as a slur, a warning sign, a red flag, a symptom of that you have dangerous conviction. But I've had time over the years to think and mature. And perhaps I should have been flattered in retrospect. For the more I see today, the more I believe it wasn't such an insult, after all, to be called a dictator. I'd be lying, I have to say this to you all, I'd be lying if I denied the fact that in those moments, even back then, but increasingly so today, I take some pleasure in imagining the smugness wiped clean from those sort of people, their faces, as they are hauled off to some security prison for crimes against reason, against God, habeas corpus suspended until we clean out the country of our enemies. I would be lying if I told you that was not a strong urge that I sometimes have. But alas, I was merciful. And perhaps that's the real tragedy. And still I've had time to think. And maybe what they sensed in me was not tyranny at all, but a stubborn refusal to kneel before the golden calves of this generation. So let the record show, if you're watching this, you can spread it out, you can share this, whatever you want to do with this. If I had to choose between being a whisper in a pseudo-democracy of decay or a trumpet in a holy dictatorship, I will choose the trumpet. And if Christ be the dictator, then let his will be done. We are very much in the final chapters of a trilogy of errors, a eulogy for a party which itself is the eulogy of the Enlightenment, which itself is but the echo of Eden's ancient sin. Ye shall be as gods. You have that in Genesis at the very beginning of the Bible. The temptation of Adam and Eve was to be as gods. And their little circus act, and when I say there, I am referring to today's secular humanists. It really consists of three parts. The canonization of past failures. Then a catalog of present grievances. And lastly, that boldest of all farces, the promise of future miracles, which in turn require a new set of demands to give them unlimited power over us. That is the essence of their creed. The political hucksters' holy trinity. But what can we say about us, the true victors of the hour? For you have no victory if you are not a Christian. So let no pride sprout from our brows, because it is written in the Bible, let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself as he that putteth it off. That's in 1 Kings chapter 20, by the way. Victory is best worn in silence, crowned with humility. We need no praises. We don't need anything sung for us. Our deeds should echo louder than any trumpet of God's enemies. They have no trumpet, actually. They have the sounds of hell. But we have to proceed to the matter at hand. The principle championed by these modern day so-called progressives and conservatives too, by the way. This goes both ways. That legality is king. That all things at all times in all circumstances must bow before the man's law. But remember what Mark chapter 2 verse 27 says. I say unto you, law was not made for man, not man for the law. When law sustains society, let it reign. But when we have a system like today where the law strangles us, then let dictatorship, grim and unwelcome though it be, though not as unwelcome as anarchy and revolution, let it rise like a thundercloud to quench the fire. Shall we not say, then, that dictatorship is evil? Yes, just as the surgeon's knife is evil when held to the throat of an innocent person. But when the body politic festers with infection, what then? When its limbs convulse in rebellion and its breath reeks of sedition against God, then the knife is not cruelty but salvation. I would rather be at peace with my conscience than at war with my instincts. And because of this, no person listening to me today, in their homes, in churches, or beyond these walls, may ever say, let it never be said about me that I sought my glory upon the road of prideful ambition. For I am nothing more than, in the words of a dear commentator last week, I am nothing more than a country gentleman. And like the German monk Martin Luther, I am nourished by God. Bread made the proper way, vegetable stews on fast days, pies and ale or wine. And I still have a full head of hair. You see, we have to talk now about the dictatorship of nature, of history, and God. So we have the threefold legitimacy of dictatorship. First, we have dictatorship by reason. Society, abstract, in an abstract sense, like the body, alternates between health and disease. And when the infection is scattered, a mild cure suffices. The law, the courts, the ordinary gears of governance. But when the plague concentrates and becomes organized, when it gains arms and banners and slogans, then the cure must be equally concentrated. Resistance must match revolution in force and form. Second, by history. Was not Athens ruled by ostracism, that democracy's guillotine? Was not Rome herself entrusted in crisis to a single hand? Even England, our old merry England, that paragon of parliamentary pride, grants its legislature the power to suspend liberties, dethrone kings, even change religions. If you are British, you know this very well. The doctrine of Britain, when it comes to parliamentary law, is that Parliament is supreme. Not an individual, but Parliament itself. And where is there a dictatorship more terrifying than one draped in wigs and robes? And what of Oliver Cromwell, the great Oliver Cromwell? That iron-willed Puritan. He was an iron-willed Puritan general, military general, forged by fire and providence, when kings had grown fat on idolatry and Parliament lay gasping like a fish on the sand. Cromwell rose, not for crown or coin, but for covenant. He was not a tyrant. The Irish, those of the Irish Republic, they try to always tell you that. He was a surgeon with a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other. He ruled not for pleasure, but because the times demanded one man who would kneel only before God. The Lord hath delivered them into our hands. He thundered at Dunbar. And so he had. He meaning God. And say what you will about Oliver Cromwell. You can also say a lot. I've been called a lot of bad things too. Doesn't matter. He did not govern as a man, but as a storm sent by heaven. He broke a corrupt monarchy, not to wear its crown, but to remind the world that Christ is king and none other. And the third, and most profoundly, we have dictatorship by divine example. Does not the Almighty himself govern his universe by fixed laws, gravity, seasons, orbits, and yet break them at will? When he parted the Red Sea, when he raised the dead, did he not suspend nature's code? If God himself reserves the right to act beyond his laws, shall man presume to be more lawful than heaven? Remember what Isaiah 5:21, or if you're British, Isaiah says, "Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight." And now that brings us to the French Revolution, which really has 3 blasphemies. So what of the republics, these brittle idols of modernity? The French Revolution arrived like a thief in the night, unexpected, apocalyptic. The king died with the myth of, he believed in divine monarchy. Napoleon expired with the myth of glory. But France at that point has exhausted all illusions. And what remained? You had the Republic of 3 lies. Liberté, liberty. Égalité, equality. Fraternité, fraternity. In the name of liberty, she proclaimed dictatorship. In the name of equality, she invented aristocracies of revolutionary pedigree. Republicans of the eve, of the morrow, of noble pedigree of some kind. How absurd! In the name of fraternity, she turned Paris into a battleground, a Cainite battleground where brothers devoured one another in civil war. Behind all of this ideology, this secular, humanist, antichrist ideology, behold the gospel of the guillotine. Behold the republic of blasphemies. The real source of revolution, it's really spiritual consciousness, not hunger. That is where the French failed. We are often told that revolutions come from poverty and hunger. No. Revolution comes when the people are not only hungry, but humiliated. When they see the feast of kings spread before them and are told to be grateful for the crumbs. When they are told to obey laws written by men who break them. We have that all across America today. To worship democracy, a pseudo-democracy is what we have, run by donors. To trust the science spoken by liars in lab coats. We all remember that clown, that stupid little man, Dr. Fauci, for example. It is not bread that triggers revolution. It is the realization that you've been played. What turns hunger into revolution is consciousness, the awareness that the system is rigged, that laws are selectively enforced, that power wears a smile and calls itself progress. When your human dignity is priced like a commodity and your neighborhood is devoured by development and unaccountable foreign investors and a corrupt, apostate politicians who aid them, when you're told to tighten your belt while the elite fly on private jets to climate conferences. And as Job chapter 41, verse 34 says, he beholdeth all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. So, my brethren today, who I know for a fact that many of you have a lifestyle of scrolling and swiping. You meme and you march, and we live in an age of confusion masquerading as clarity. We chant freedom while craving control, and scream equality while kneeling to algorithms and surveillance. The world is not moving forward. It is turning back, not toward Eden, but toward Babel. We are told this is the age of liberation, and yet never has man been more governed, more tracked, more legislated against, more medicated, more everything that is against liberty, more numbed than ever before. Do not be fooled by the chatter of progressives or the pageantry of conservatives. Neither offers you liberty, only different colors of leash. The left, the so-called left, wants to keep you safe. So they have speech codes and speech rules and trigger warnings and so-called mental health ideas you don't need. The right wants to keep you free with billion-dollar defense budgets to fight wars that are not in the interest of a godly people. Gambling apps and Walmart patriotism where you can buy your Chinese-made American flag. Both sides love to say that they love so-called democracy and liberty really, but only if they can package it, market it, and add a rewards program. Real freedom has no sponsor but God. There is a law, not of man, but of history and heaven. I call it the thermometer of tyranny. When religion is hot, politics is cool. When faith burns, freedom breathes. But when religion grows cold, when men stop fearing God, they start fearing everything else. And governments grow teeth. When interior discipline vanishes, exterior force must rise. Thus, when the soul is no longer bound by conscience, Christian conscience, the state must bind the body with chains, with uniforms, with cameras, with laws upon laws upon laws. That is not governance. That is Leviathan rising. Look at what Luke chapter 21 used to say. And there shall be signs in the sun, man's heart failing them for fear. Correct me if I'm not remembering correctly. It said I think it was failing them for fear. And how do you build? How can we analyze this timeline of obedient collapse? Let us talk about the true genesis of the modern monster. In the apostolic age, men ruled themselves by love. Christian love. No kings, no jails, just Christ. Then came corruption, and with it, we have the judges. The more corruption, and so we have more politicians. Then we have standing armies today. 1 million arms to restrain men. Never before in history has there been so much tyranny. But it was not enough. Then came the police. 1 million more eyes. And still not enough. Then came the bureaucracies. 1 million ears. And still not enough. And now, the smartphones, the satellites, the algorithm, the godless gospel of code. So what was once a state has become a nervous system without a soul, slithering across continents, and men cheer it on because it brings them dopamine. And we have a world of right-wing fantasies and left-wing fraud. Let us speak plainly, as Christians must. To those of you on the right, you think restoring some tradition will save you. But you've replaced God with secularistic philosophies, the cross with courts, and the 10 Commandments with my freedom. You love order, but forget that without Christian love, properly understood, not the hippie, stupid kind of love they preach today, order is tyranny. You say Christian values, but your gospel in practice is corporate consumerism, not the cross. You have not repented. You are not saved if you have not repented. And to those of you on the left, you cloak envy in the language of justice. You preach equity, but envy those who are truly better than you. You say you hate the rich, but you spend your lives fantasizing about becoming rich. You cry oppression, but demand that the state grow larger, the very beast that devours you and impoverishes you. Far more than the so-called millionaires. And the only reason the millionaires are able to impoverish you is precisely because they have state privilege. You say you hate power, but you crave it in every tweet, every time you cancel someone who doesn't agree with you, every forced apology. God damn you. The only revolution you've completed is the revolution around your own navel. You think we are in the age of enlightenment? No. We are in the final twilight of Rome with Wi-Fi. In some places. Not here, you won't have Wi-Fi. You got traditional connection. And Rome had senators. What do we have today in America? We have influencers. Rome had orgies. We have polyamorous and open, so-called open relationships. Rome had bread and circuses. What do we have? We have DoorDash and TikTok. Rome had Caesar. We will have someone far worse. And you don't believe me? Ask yourself, what moral force today can stand against a global government with drones, data, and dopamine in its arsenal? How can you expect any kind of uprising from a generation of young people who feels traumatized because you grade them in red ink? None, because the only thing strong enough to resist such a beast is faith. And you abandon that for your disgusting soy lattes and pornography. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18, where there is no vision, the people perish. So the world is headed toward a single, monstrous despotism. Not the dictatorship of a man, but the dictatorship of everything. The bureaucracy, the machine, the safety protocols, the speech codes, The artificial intelligence that knows your vices better than you do. So the question is not if you will be ruled, it is by whom. Will you be ruled from above? By something higher, nobler, sacrificial like the Lord Jesus Christ, or from below? By what is base, cynical, automated, and cruel, from the devil? Will you kneel before the sword of justice or the scalpel of bureaucratic hell? I choose the dictatorship of the sword of Christ. Better the sword of Christ, held high in daylight, than the dagger of dark devils, hiding in shadows, dripping with the blood of innocents. But we have to talk now about another dictatorship. The dictatorship of the algorithm of AI. We should not mince words. You were not raised, the young people of this century, you were not raised, you were engineered. You were not taught to think, but to consume. Not to sacrifice, but to scroll. Not to dream, but to obey. You were sold the myth of autonomy. And instead, you were handed user agreements in all that you do. They told you to express yourself and then lock your soul inside a glowing rectangle. You who consider yourself that you rage against the machine, look again. You are not fighting it. You are the system. You're updating it every morning. And let me speak now to the most passionate among you, the anti-capitalists, the street marchers, the ones with ragged shoes and burning hearts. You are right to be angry. You are right to be disgusted. But they have misdirected your fire. They told you the enemy was your wealthy neighbor, your father, the boomers, your history, if you're white, your God. It is not. The enemy is the network of cowards with power, unelected, unpunished, and unreachable, who rule you with codes, credit scores, global finance, public health mandates, social credit algorithms, ESG scores, cyber surveillance, corporate media, neurochemical manipulation, and 1,000 invisible wires pulling at your conscience and your wallet. They don't care about you at all. So long as you are quiet, shop online, and die on schedule. They want you dead. It is not envy that stirs you, I understand that. You really have a taste of judgment. You're just misdirecting your judgment. For you have seen power in the 21st century as it is. We have an unaccountable elite feeding you illusions boiled in the grease of human misery. And then you ask, but what of freedom? Well, Nietzsche, the German philosopher Nietzsche, thought God was dead. But I tell you this, freedom is dead. Freedom was not assassinated by kings or fascists, but smothered by tyrannical laws, paperwork, and HR departments, compliance forms, the corporatization of our country. Freedom was dragged through Geneva, gagged in Brussels. You Europeans, you know this. The European Union is tyranny. You have no free speech in Europe. Increasingly in America, although we have the advantage of the First Amendment, which you don't have, we are controlled in different ways. But in the case of Europe, you already lost all free speech. You're not allowed to say anything about certain groups of people in Europe, or you'll be arrested, even if you're mugged and assaulted and raped. And you know exactly who I'm talking about. It was dissected in Silicon Valley. and buried beneath a landslide of policy memos. And now they parade her corpse in grotesque parades and hashtags, pretending that freedom lives on, and it doesn't. Remember what 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17 says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we evicted the Spirit of the Lord. Now let's go back to that concept, ye shall be as gods. It is the final lie. It is the same whisper of the devil that began all things badly. Ye shall be as gods. But this time, the tempter does not appear as a serpent. He comes either as an update, a feature, a biometric scan, a pill to make you feel less alive, a chip to make you feel nothing at all. You were given toys. You were wired into fantasies. You were told you are you, that you are free, while every real decision of any consequence, including even the toxic chemicals they lace your processed food with, is made without either your knowledge or your permission. You are told that in modern society you have choices, but all the choices lead to the same dead end. They are all different flavors for the same deadly poison. And that is the final tyranny. The Matrix was not a warning. It was a blueprint. And now I say this with holy defiance. If you want to truly rebel, read scripture. If you want to resist, turn off your device and kneel before a holy God and repent. If you want to fight, start by not being owned. The vast majority of you allow yourself to be owned by others. You are willing slaves. The greatest act of rebellion in the 21st century is to fear God and not man. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28 says it. For fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. You think rebellion is defying the state? That's easy. Real rebellion is saying, no, I won't sell my soul to your dopamine casino. I won't treat lust as liberation. I won't trade my manhood for convenience. The only rebellion worth fighting for is one where you are not just against something, but for someone, for the King of Kings. Because the king must return. And I tell you plainly, there can be no resurrection of the West until there is a return of the king, the Lord Jesus Christ. Not a man in a palace, not a Caesar, not Donald Trump, not a new Napoleon. I speak of Christ the King, the man who touched lepers, rebuked Pharisees, and stared down Caesar without blinking. He doesn't need a biometric ID. He has no Twitter or X feed. He rode a donkey, not a Tesla. And yet, he split the calendar in two. And so if you want meaning, you want purpose, you want to be dangerous in the right way, then you must choose, like Joshua said long ago. Choose you this day whom ye will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. Because the future is not uncertain, it is binary. You will either be a data point in a tyrannical satanic system or a name in the book of life. You will either bow to AI or you will bow to the Alpha and the Omega. You will either live in a labyrinth of mirrors, or you will walk the narrow road to the celestial city in heaven. There is no middle ground, Neutrality is cowardice. Passivity is consent. So I leave you with this, brethren. I'm not a priest. I'm not a politician. I am just a man. If you prefer, a country gentleman. But I am just a man. And this world is collapsing, not because it lacks money, or food, or tech, but because it lacks men who believe in something more than themselves. When faith dies, tyranny rises. But I tell you, even now, if a spark can catch, if one soul in 1,000 repents, the tide can still turn. Remember the famous, one of my favorite verses in the Bible, 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, then will I hear from heaven and will heal their land. Let that one be you. Reject the graveyard of ideas. Refuse the system of lies. Rise up, fear God, and live free or die forever, to be cast into the scorching lake of fire, where you will be in anguish and horror for eternity.